The 49ers have finally chosen Mac Jones. Mac Jones has signed with Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers a 2-year, $7 million deal with $5 million guaranteed. Kyle finally gets the quarterback he was going to draft 3rd overall before the rest of the organization made him pick Trey Lance. Now that makes it real interesting. The 49ers moved on from their backup this offseason, Josh Dobbs. He signed with the Patriots, although he was kind of like the 3rd string / 2nd string last year, right? The year previous, though, they had Sam Darnold, who was also kind of like a former 1st-round pick project player who we know what he went on to do. Max value $11.5 million for Mac Jones, which means he's locked and loaded as their backup. And the incentives are probably based on the play time if he ends up playing at all for the 49ers. If Brock Purdy gets hurt, which he did last year, and he's been hurt twice in his career, by the way. So there is some value of having a backup in San Francisco. So Mac Jones, I think, is a great fit, by the way, for the Niners. I always thought that, back when he was drafted as out of Alabama, I thought that was the ideal place for him. Physically, he is not a great quarterback. He doesn't have great arm strength. I know him better than pretty much anybody. He was a Patriots guy. I really liked him coming out of the draft because I thought in college he was a very quick processor, very smart, could make the right decision, and he had great mechanics and can throw an accurate ball. And to me, that's always first and foremost in this type of system. Honestly, he has a lot of similar traits to Brock Purdy. I think Purdy is a better athlete, but Jones can do a lot of the same things that Purdy can do from the pocket, for sure. He's actually a little bit bigger at 6'3", 220. He is only 26 years old. He's a former 1st-round pick and national champion. He was 2nd in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting in his rookie year with the Patriots, and he's never played on a team with great weaponry. In New England, he was kind of scapegoated by Bill Belichick and the organization for putting Matt Patricia as their offensive coordinator, for never signing an offensive line or a receiving core. And honestly, Mac never really got a fair shake after his rookie year. That being said, I don't think Mac is a starting quarterback just because I think physically he doesn't have what you're looking for in terms of one trait that stands out. He doesn't have a wicked arm. He doesn't have great mobility. And those two things, you need one of those things, in my opinion. Or you have to be like the smartest, most cerebral, most accurate player you've ever seen. Like, you have to have one trait that really stands out in your game. But I think in San Francisco, you can maximize a player like this. If he does have to step in, I think he can play well. And honestly, I thought in Jacksonville, he didn't play bad. He had to start 7 games last year. He went 2-5, but he had a 65% completion percentage. He did have an 8-to-8 touchdown to interception ratio, which isn't great. But I thought he kept the Jags competitive on a really bad team with a really bad defense. They were like the worst defense in football last year. He had 1,672 yards, which averaged out to 167 yards per game. Had an 80 passer rating last year. So his numbers weren't great, but I thought when you watched him, he had some moments of still playing pretty good football. Let's check his grade from last year. He was graded as the 32nd quarterback in football, which sounds about right, like the worst starter possible. And they graded 42 quarterbacks. And if you include the guys that they didn't grade, like he would have been 65. Like he would have been probably a little bit higher. But he had a 65 grade. He actually had a 75.4 rushing grade, believe it or not, which was the highest. As a rookie, he was the 12th graded quarterback in the NFL. In his second season, he was 24th. And in 2023 was really the disastrous season where he was 36th. That was the final straw in New England. Bad season for Mac, bad season for the team, bad season for Belichick. He had 10 touchdowns, 12 picks, right? 77 passer rating. Not a good season for him. But in his first 2 years, I actually thought that he could be a franchise quarterback. especially after his rookie year. I mean, he went 10-7. He took the team to the playoffs. He had a 67% completion percentage. He threw 22 touchdowns, only 13 picks. He had a 92 passer rating. And then his second year, he went 6-8. The offense wasn't very good. He lost Josh McDaniels. He had a similar yards per game, a similar sack percentage, a similar yards per completion. His touchdowns went down. His completion percentage went down a little bit in his second year. But honestly, I didn't think, like, if you look deeper into his stats, like with some of the advanced stats, he actually showcased some pretty good stats. So, like, just going back to 2022, not even looking at his rookie year, because I think the rookie year everybody kind of knows about with Mac, but just looking at 2022, all right? So he was actually 12th in big-time throws in 2022. He had 22 of those. He had 14 turnover-worthy plays, which was 17th, tied with Justin Herbert. Like, 2022 wasn't that bad of a season for him, to be honest. So it really was just 2023 where he was really bad. And then last year he was a backup for Jacksonville behind a bad offensive line with no running game and a terrible defense. So you look at Jacksonville last season, I'm just going to look at their team stats. They were 31st in yards allowed defensively, 27th in points allowed. They were last in pass defense. Their run game was 19th in yards per attempt. So they were a bad team. So if Mac could get in there, if Purdy gets hurt, or, whatever happens with Purdy, if he holds out, or whatever happens with his contract, I think the Niners have a quarterback that can play a little bit. And I think what Kyle will like is his ability to pick up the offense, make quick decisions. And Mac was really good at Alabama with reading the defense by utilizing motion. That's something that Mac was really good at. And the Niners use more motion than just about anybody in the NFL. So he's really good at using his eyes and kind of figuring out where the numbers advantage is, playing in the RPO game. Play action was a skill set for him. So I've always felt that was his best fit in the NFL. So it's a really interesting pickup. I'm excited for Mac. I hope that we get to... I'm intrigued for, like, the preseason. Like, I want to see how he looks on this team. And, yeah, we'll see. But I think it's a good backup quarterback for that team. They also picked up a corner, Trey Brown, who I think will compete for snaps. I don't necessarily think will be a starter on this team. He was a Seahawk. He's young. He's 27, turning 28. Not that young, but 27, turning 28. He's only played in the NFL for 4 years. He started 10 games over the last 2 seasons for Seattle, 34 tackles in 2023 with 2 picks, 26 tackles last year. He allowed 124 passer rating in 2024, but a 90 in 2023. He's a perimeter corner, in my opinion, despite his size of 5'10", 185. I'm not sure if there's any crossover between him and Robert Saleh. I don't think so. But I would just say that being that he played in Seattle, I think there is probably some tape that Saleh looked at and said, that is useful in my defense. And Trey Brown had to obviously switch to a Mike McDonald scheme this past year instead of a Pete Carroll scheme. So his numbers are a lot better in his first 3 years than the last season where he played in a different scheme. So it could be one of those things where Saleh saw how he played in that system and they could take him and maybe use him as a 4th corner or something like that. That's probably what I think he would be, is like a 4th corner for this team. Looking at his grading to finish it off, he was graded he wasn't graded. He didn't register enough snaps. 53.5 was his grade. 290 snaps. In 2023, he was the 70th corner in football. Played 277 snaps out wide for the Seahawks. So, that's the Niners. Mac Jones finally is a 49er. Yeah. The San Francisco 49ers are taking a lot of heat from their fan base right now because they're letting all their iconic players walk. See ya, Debo. Bye. Kyle Juszczyk, we don't want your wife's cool shirts anymore. Huh. Who cares about that? Javon Hargrave, see you later. Dre Greenlaw, we don't want to sign you. Hufunga? Talanoa, we don't want you either. I don't care if you have Troy Polamalu's hair. Aaron Banks, you can have that contract. But 49ers, they've been losing a lot of pieces. So they had to make up for it somehow. They have signed a bunch of players today, none of them being household names. One of them standing out, his name is Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver that they know very well from the Los Angeles Rams, also a former Kansas City Chief, who they faced in a Super Bowl. Now, that being said, I like Demarcus Robinson. I think he's a great depth receiver. This past year, he had his best NFL season. 31 catches, 505 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He will be the 4th receiver for the 49ers in 2025. You would think, unless they trade Brandon Ayuk, in which case he would be the 3rd receiver. But I think he's an upgrade over whatever they had previously, like Chris Connolly, like that type of player, right? Like that's kind of been their 4th or 5th receiver type. Robinson's drastically better than those guys, in my opinion. He has 7 touchdowns this year, 16.3 yards per catch. He also provides a deep threat, really good with Stafford down the field, had a great connection in that regard. Pretty good speed. He's not like electric, but pretty good speed, pretty good size, 6'1", really good understanding of zone coverages, really nuanced player, having played with Andy Reid and Sean McVay in those systems, having played with Patrick Mahomes and Matthew Stafford. He's got a very good feel, and I think he just always seemingly makes big catches. Like, this is a guy that's just kind of clutch, makes big catches in big moments of games. 2 years, $9.5 million, $6 million guaranteed. And if they do decide to trade Brandon Ayuk, I think this is a move that allows them a little versatility within that if they want to do that. I'm just throwing that out there. But even if there's an injury, let's say an injury to Brandon Ayuk, an injury to Ricky Pearsall, an injury to Jawan Jennings, Demarcus Robinson can provide a starting caliber player as your 4th receiver in that mix. So that's really the value he brings. That's what he did for the Rams. That's what he did for the Chiefs, is if there was a guy that went down, man, put in Demarcus Robinson, you're good, right? He's their new Jawan Jennings. He's their new Kendrick Bourne. He's their new, next man up mentality type of guy. He's a little bit older than those guys at that point, but he's a pretty good guy. He's a pretty good player, and I think he's a nice little add for them. I don't think he'll play a ton unless there's injuries, but I do feel, and it will be interesting. Maybe they want to go to more spread. Maybe they want more 4 receivers, right? They did cut their fullback. So I do kind of wonder, are they going to be a more 4 receiver spread 11 personnel team? That's intriguing. So you got to throw that out there. But Robinson was the 75th graded receiver in football, which is like a solid 3rd receiver. Last year in 2023, he was 51st. So yeah, he's coming off some good seasons with the Rams. Now, they also made some other signings. The one that I like the most is Jason Pinnock, I believe is how you pronounce his name. It might be Pinnock or something, but I've been a fan of his in New York. He's only 25. He turns 26 in June, but he has played starting snaps, starting games. He's been a starter for the Giants the last 2 years, okay? He had 2 picks in 2023. And he also had the most yards in interception returns in 2023. He had 2 sacks in 2023 and 3 sacks in 2024 and 85 tackles in both seasons. I like him as a depth safety. I think he was a little bit miscast as a starter in New York, but I think as a 3rd or 4th safety, he's a good signing with the ability to have a lot of starting snaps. Like, he's played a lot of football, right? So that's good. He graded as the 78th best safety in football, and his best grade happened to be as a pass rusher. He actually had the highest grade among all safeties in the NFL as a pass rusher this past season. It's a very unique skill. 59.5 run defense grade, not great. Coverage grade was worse, but maybe they could look at him as a box safety and maybe use his dimension a little bit as a pass rusher. Last year, he actually graded as the 43rd best safety in 2023. So I think he's kind of underrated because he's kind of shown a bit of a range. ability to be a guy that's, intercepting passes and returning them for touchdowns, a guy that's getting sacks, a guy that's pass rushing and blitzing, a guy that's doing a lot of different things. So I actually really like that pickup for only a 1-year deal. He's a playmaker. He also has 5 forced fumbles in 3 seasons. So that's pretty good too. Now, Richie Grant is another safety they signed who is an Atlanta Falcon, former Atlanta Falcon. He is 27, turning 28 in November, former second-round pick. He played in this type of system before, had 3 sacks in 2023, 103 tackles. In 2022, 123 tackles. I think he's kind of underrated too. I mean, I like both of these additions. He wasn't a starter this year with Raheem Morris becoming their head coach. But something tells me that Shanahan liked his tape when they faced him on defense, because I feel like he's, 123 tackles in a season is pretty solid. This year, he didn't play much, only 163 snaps, but 2022, he had a good season, 51st. He is more of a free safety than a strong safety. And like I said, former second-round pick. He's never really... last year, he had a 97 passer rating allowed. 2022, 87 passer rating allowed. So, I guess they look at it as Pennick could be their backup strong safety. Grant could be their backup free safety. That might be how they're looking at it right there. And then they also signed a key special teamer in Luke Gifford, who's one of the best special teams aces in football. Special teams for 49ers was awful last year. They needed improvement, so it's a good signing. Luke Farrell is a really good blocker at tight end. That might be the replacement for Kyle Juszczyk. They gave him 3 years, $20 million. So the ability to use multi-tight end formations is certainly going to be there for San Francisco. But they also have the dimension of adding Demarcus Robinson for 3 or 4 receiver sets. Farrell was the 49th graded tight end last year, which is pretty solid. He had an 82.6 pass block grade, a 61.9 run block grade as well. He does not have much experience as a pass catcher, though. He is basically a blocker. He has 36 catches in his career, and I'm not sure how much he's played at fullback, but I wonder if that's a possibility. 6'5", 250 pounds. Pretty big boy. Those are the 49ers signings from day 2 of free agency.